Honestly, the patch is probably not happening today, right? Can we all agree on that? It's probably Friday, I think. So, I mean, I know for one, I'm just gonna be sitting here. Ask Bruno. Yeah, I was talking to Artur earlier, and he said he's only a boss. So
Not everybody's perfect.
looks like you're better at this game than Artur. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get into some patch notes, huh? This is the dawn of the assassin players. My assassin brethren. Now is our time. Now is our time. Long have we waited. This is it. Assassins that have an enemy in their attack range will attack instead of jumping. This is so good. Okay, Bloodbound Alliance extra. I did not see this one when I was skimming it before. Oh. Oh, that's so good. Stop stalling? Yeah, I know. I'm just like, okay, listen. Here's my thinking. You guys need to understand where I'm coming from. I didn't realize until like an hour ago that the patch wasn't live yet. I was planning on streaming the patch today, and I realized an hour ago, Valve debated me. It's not actually live yet. You guys have known this entire time. So I'm sitting here with the promised stream today.
I'm basically
and I'm like, well, shit. I don't actually want to stream this current patch. I mean, who would? So therefore, I have to stall long enough. I have to analyze patch notes for like 4 hours so that the patch can come out and we can all be good. Now, the problem occurs when I realize there's no known universe in which this patch is actually dropping at a reasonable time. Like, if it drops today, which I would be thankful for, it is literally going to be like 7 hours from now, I think. Right? Perfect. Alright, guys. This is it. You've waited this long. Finally, patch notes review. Okay, so I want to let you guys know, I've skimmed this. I haven't read every single detail. There's going to be some things that are probably going to surprise me a little bit. Alright, so let us begin. Added loot round, tips and tricks to season info tab. Useless battle pass loadout, change your equipped items, that's neat. Path to Sunbreeze custom board, so there's an alternative board, which is like when you get enough of your battle pass completed, you get that. Fixed high CPU utilization on Mac OS, yeah, but I mean, who the hell uses Mac in 2019? Removed code that caused crashes and kept code that doesn't cause crashes. Classic Valve patch notes. Buffed. What's buffed? What do they buff? See, this is why I don't read the in-game notes, guys. This happened last time too. Then something got increased over here. I guess it's supposed to just, there's not supposed to be a new line here. It's just buffed battle pass XP. Wait, what the heck? And then increased battle pass XP down here? God damn it. Use browser? Guys, I don't know how to stream my browser. Invisible units, obviously. What the heck? What is this supposed to be saying? I don't understand. It says buffed battle pass XP rewards for playing matches. Okay. So it's just like there's 2 new lines here when there's not supposed to be. So it's you know, it's just like changing XP gain and stuff like that. Increased battle pass XP rewards for different tiers of daily challenge, POG, you know. Okay, here we go. The good stuff. We get into the meat of the patch, okay? And this is the part where the stalling really starts to begin. Combat persists while some abilities complete their attacks. Lich, Witch Doctor, etc. We may never know what etc. means. It's anyone's guess. I mean, so this is kind of like already a little bit what they did before. Didn't they kind of already do this before? They said like they gave it 5 extra seconds for projectiles like Lich and Witch Doctor, right? So it's just, it means it's, instead of 5 seconds, it's just wait until everything ends. Gyro Bomb can finish now? Okay, okay. Interesting. I like it. It's not really a big balance change. There's going to be really interesting implications in this patch in terms of like what the new meta is going to be, presumably. So, summons are no longer included in targeting for spells, except for special summons like Arc Warden and Spirit Bear. So this is pretty interesting. So what this means is basically normal summons will not get like doomed or fingered, basically. This is not really going to be changing too much, really. It's just basically makes them a little bit cleaner. Isn't this like a nerf to summons? The fact that summons could eat like certain abilities is probably a benefit to them, right? All things considered. Presumably it means, you know, some of your positive spells like Warlock heal won't work on them, but I mean, realistically speaking, you know, whoever wants Warlock anyway. Okay. Fixed box in assassins not jumping towards the enemies. That's not too much of a change. That happened under like really niche circumstances anyway. Assassins that have an enemy in their attack range will attack instead of jumping. Alright guys, so this is the start of it. Yo, Ito Dantes, welcome to the 1/8 Gay Club. So, this is it. This is the dawn of the assassin players. My assassin brethren. Now is our time. Now is our time. Long have we waited. This is it. Assassins that have an enemy in their attack range will attack instead of jumping. This is so good. You guys have no idea how good this is. It's pretty good. It's alright. It's not that great. It's pretty good though. Basically, what this means is it's a really, really big buff to units like Queen of Pain, Morphling, and Sand King in particular. You don't even really have to run them as assassins. Like, even completely irregardless of the fact that they're assassins. So what you would do in auto chess, this is how it worked in auto chess. What you would do is, in like the early mid-game, you could just like slide in a casual Quap into your lineup, right? The idea is you just put her kind of like in the second row, and then her scream, because she doesn't jump, her scream will just hit like all of the units on the board, right? Or you can put Morphling in front, and because he won't jump if he's right in the front row, if you have Primordials, it means your opponents are attacking him, which is what he wants, and B, your opponents are attacking him, which is what he wants. Because when he gets mana to charge his waveform, he can just waveform away when it gets damaged, which is really, really good. So Quap, Morphling, and Sand King in that way kind of want to be like closer to frontliners just based on how their abilities work. And this allows them to position a lot better, right? And of course you can still position things in the back row if you do want them to jump. So it just means your positioning actually matters as an assassin picker, as a filthy, filthy assassin picker. Now, I want to let you know, guys, let the record show, I was playing assassins before it was cool. In this patch, it's about to be really, really cool to play assassins. It's about to be great. Yo, Big Yeti, welcome to the 1/8 Gay Club, man. So yeah, this is it, guys. This is just the start of the assassin buffs, by the way. More to come. All right, change the length of the preparation phase for the first 3 rounds from 25 to 15 seconds. So this is pretty standard. It just makes the early game, the first 3 creep rounds, a bit faster. This is an improvement. It just saves 30 seconds of everyone's time. This is a lot of time saved when you think about it. So it's 10 seconds for every 3 rounds, and this is you guys are experiencing some stalling action here. For 3 rounds, it saves 10 seconds per round per person. 8 people is 240 seconds. So 240 seconds is 4 minutes. 4 minutes of added human being time per match of Underlords. That's a lot of time. It saves us hours of time over the course of your average day. How many players play Underlords daily? How many matches of Underlords are there? Because 4 minutes of human time saved per match is insane. Like, think of the man hours we can start putting back into the economy after wasting our time playing video games with this 4 minutes saved per video game. That's insane. 4 minutes? That's so much. That's like as much time as I've wasted talking about this change. Like, it compounds. Okay, I'm done. All right, don't target healing disabled units for healed. Don't target them. Is this patch notes telling me what to do? Dude, I don't let no patch notes tell me what to do. What is this? Don't target healing disabled units for heals? Do what I want. Don't... What's going on? Yo, Tim Shellwoo, welcome to the 1/8K club, man. It's just giving me a tip? The fuck? What is this? Don't target healing disabled units for heals. Okay, game, I won't. There is now a notification when someone completes their win streak. Cool. You won't see heroes from previous shop whenever you reroll a shop. Ah, this I like. So, this is a mechanic in auto chess that I was calling blacklisting after a mechanic in Gwent that I called blacklisting, which is basically the idea of like when you reroll a shop, every of the 5, well, it's up to 5 because there could be duplicates. Any of the up to 5 heroes you see won't be seen again in your next shop. They get blacklisted from, you know, the pool of random heroes that you're going to see in your next shot temporarily. Only when you manually reroll, not during natural rolls going into the next round. So this is really interesting. It's basically a buff to rolling in general. The value of gold being put into rolling just got stronger. Seems like a subtle change. It honestly does. I wish I could like highlight this, but you know, it seems like a subtle change, but it's actually a pretty big deal. It basically just buffs rolling as a concept, period, like across the board. So strategies like just like super aggressive leveling will typically get a little bit worse because using gold for rolling as opposed to leveling got a bit better. It's buffed to 3 stars in general. Building 3 stars is just easier. It's buffed to certain strategies that are more inclined to try to get 3 stars, like assassins or knights, basically, or warriors. Those are the kind of strategies that are going to go for 3 stars more than, you know, certain other builds. So it's just very important to keep in mind. This definitely makes it more worth it to go for 3 stars. We're going to have to talk about meta implications after this whole thing. There's a ton of patch notes to get through here. This is definitely a small but noticeable piece in terms of like where I expect the new meta to end up. I expect things to get faster. I expect there to be more rolling instead of leveling. You're probably not going to be able to do stupid nonsense like level 9 on 21 right now. I think there's basically no way that will really work. We'll see though. Okay. Warlock Alliance now targets the unit with the lowest health percentage, not lowest health value. So this is basically a buff to Venomancer. Basically it means that units that have low health but high health percentage, which is like plague wards at low base health, won't really be as viable candidates for the Warlock Alliance lifelink, right? So it makes a unit like Venomancer a lot stronger, and at the same time, Warlock Alliance lifesteal changed from 50, 100, 150 to 50, 80, 130, which is obviously just like a nerf. This is pretty much needed, I think. It's kind of interesting how the scaling happens now. So before, I think we should talk about scaling a little bit. Scaling can be very deceptive. Okay, so let's look at these numbers, 50, 100 to 150. So it's important to, when we're looking at these numbers, they seem linear, right? It's like they increase by the same amount every time, even from 0 to 2. 0 to 2 is 50, and then every increment of 2 Warlocks adds another 50. But because Warlock's lifesteal because it will cast per Warlock you have, every Warlock you have adds another cast point for the Warlock Alliance. It was actually kind of like, so it's sort of 100 total at level 1 because you have 2 Warlocks doing 50 each. And then at 4, it's 400, because you have 4 Warlocks doing 100 each. And then at 6, it's effectively going to be 900, because you have 6 Warlocks doing 150 each, right? It's sort of like sneaky like that. Like, it looks like it's linear, but it's not really linear, right? And now we have some interesting pattern where it goes from 50 up 30 to 80, and then up 50 again to 130. So 6 Warlocks is now, it's incentivized in the same way that, like, 9 Assassins or 9 Elusive is trying to be incentivized. And there's still just going to be no reason to run 6 Warlocks. It looks like Warlocks still might be a 4 of. That's going to be a little bit hard to say. 2 Warlocks is going to be pretty tight. It's going to be something you want to run in like mid-game and early game a lot. 4 Warlocks, and we'll get later on to how 4 Warlocks are going to get changed a bit. I think 4 Warlocks is still going to be pretty solid, but you're going to build Shadow Fiend instead of a particular nerfed hero that we'll get to later. Okay, Troll Alliance Tier 1 now provides 10% attack speed bonus to all allies. So a lot of people are saying this is pretty strong. 10% attack speed bonus to all allies is fairly sweet, I guess. It's not something that you're going to really be wanting that much early, though. It's sort of oops, sorry about that. It's sort of something that scales better into the mid game, right? Like when you have 5 units, you're getting like a total of like 5 extra attack speed. Whereas earlier, you know, when you pair trolls, it's usually with like Bat Rider, Witch Doctor. You'd probably rather have the old Troll Alliance, right? Because you'd rather have Bat Rider having like 35 extra attack speed or whatever, instead of like the entire board having 10, right? Bat Rider and Witch Doctor were good at that. So it's just a change to how early game trolls want to build. I actually think it's, if anything, a little bit of a nerf, but what it does mean is it scales deeper into like the mid game. So for example, the Tier 1 Troll Alliance that you get by pairing just 2 trolls together will actually start doing better after like, you know, rounds 15 and rounds 20 or so. Whereas before it was like more of an early game thing. Like pre-round 10, if you get a Bat 2 and you slap in a Witch Doctor, you're very happy. And that got nerfed by this, but like the rounds 15 through round 20, keeping 2 trolls on your board got a lot better. How much is the 10% in comparison to the 35 on Bat? So percent and flat are the same thing. So for example, old troll was Witch Doctor plus 35, Bat plus 35. And you would basically only go for this when you got a Bat level 2, and then you just ash pull a Witch Doctor, you're good to go. Plus total 70 across 2 units. And those are the units you want, because one of them is a level 2 Bat who needs attack speed very desperately, right? So, I mean, that balances out when you have 7 total units, which is going to take a while, right? But it does scale a little bit better into like the mid-late game, you know, especially if you have some units that, you know, want to pick up attack speed in the form of like DPS units, like Luna, for example. It's going to be a lot better when you're in Knights. It's like splashing a Witch Doctor for like the second troll or something, because then, you know, your Luna and your CK are picking up that 10% DPS. Because attack speed is just, it's DPS plus mana gain is all it is. So 10% attack speed is 10% DPS and 10% mana gain from attacks. That's it. Okay. Knight Alliance changed from 15-20-30 to 15-20-25. So it's just a slight nerf to the 6th tier of Knights. Knights are actually strongest right now when paired. 6th tier of Knights is still going to be somewhat decent. Like, you can do it. But for the most part, I think that there's going to be a lot of situations where you might have better options in this patch. It seems like Knight is still an early thing to like pair up and go. We'll see exactly how this affects things. I think Knights are just kind of doomed to always be viable. I don't think they can ever really be bad, but this does make it definitely a little bit worse to go 6 Knights. Okay, Bloodbound Alliance extra. I did not see this one when I was skimming it before. Oh, that's so good. Holy shit. Bloodbound Alliance extra damage. 125. Oh my god. Dude. Oh, fuck. Now is our time, brothers. Now, there's very few Bloodbound loyalists. Me among them. This is our time. The world wasn't ready for us before. But now they'll bow down to us. The Bloodbound meta is approaching. We have, holy shit, dude. We have like big time. I'm kind of like, I'm sort of being ironic, but honestly, this is getting there. Like, no joke. They were closer than people gave them credit for. I don't know, man. Last time I played Bloodbound, I got 1st place in a Lord ranked game. I think Gara got like 5th place in that game, and he wasn't playing Bloodbound. I'm just saying. So, I don't know, man. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. We'll have to revisit this. I need to try this out. Further testing required. Yo, Yondu. What's up, man? Welcome to the 1/8 Gay Club. Alright. Gara is still crying in German from that game? Yeah. Alright. Heartless Alliance changed from 5, 10, 20 to 5, 10, 15. 15? Huh. That's interesting. So armor, minus armor in Dota in this game has diminishing returns past a certain point when it goes like too far negative, because armor adjustments make the most value closest to 0, which means in this case it was kind of almost okay to have it 20. It's basically a nerf to Fall from Grace, right? Because you can only have 6 Heartless with Fall from Grace. That's kind of the point of 6 Heartless. So it's a pretty noticeable nerf to Fall from Grace. Just not too much of a reason to do it anymore. I mean, honestly, 6 Heartless was kind of a meme before, a little bit. It's really important to understand something, and this is going to seem a little basic to some people, but it's still something that's important to understand. So you look at this, and now they adjusted it to scale linear, right? It's 5, 10, 15. And before it was, above linear. So it's like 5, 10, and then you get the bonus for when you add in 6 to get 20. And when you first look at that, it makes you think, oh, that's broken, right? It makes you like, oh, I just need to get 6. And suddenly, so in your head, you're thinking, okay, the value from the first tier to the second tier is half of the value from the second tier to the third tier. And that's not how that works. It's how it feels like it works. First of all, armor is diminishing, so mathematically it's not even half. And secondly, usually it means you're reaching for much worse units, right? So when you get the first tier, you get this just by having Necrophos and Pudge. Top tier Heartless units. When you get the second tier, it's like, okay, at this point I'm running, maybe Fall from Grace, plus 2 humans that are solid units. And when you get the third tier, you're running even worse units, right? And this is why stuff like 9 warriors, 9 elusives, 9 assassins are just bad. Because even though the bonus is higher, the units you have to draw from are weaker, right? Again, this is going to be super obvious to some people, but for a lot of new players, this isn't how they internalize it. So it was kind of already balanced in that way. 6 Heartless was not really ever super good, and now it's even worse, right? It was decent. I don't want to say it wasn't competitive. It wasn't necessarily terrible to do it, but it was okay in certain situations and kind of overrated. I think a lot of people got Fall from Grace and tried to force 6 Heartless when it was okay. And now it feels pretty bad to do. I think there's probably going to be fairly little reason to do it now. But yeah, that's fine. Primordial Alliance now has a 10% chance to disarm ranged attacker. Ooh. Wait, seriously? Holy shit. 10% chance to disarm ranged attackers. Yo, what the heck? Okay, hang on. Whoa. So, what was it before? 30% melee, so now they're adding 10% ranged. Dude, Primordial's getting power crept. Is this getting there? No way, right? There's no way. Oh my. Dude, that's hard to evaluate, because Primordial... So Fort Primordial has kind of always been a meme. I think Fort Primordial is still going to be a meme. I think it has to. But 2 Primordials looking very good in the early game now. There's a couple of reasons later that, as we scroll down, I don't want to spoil it for any of you guys who live under literal rocks and haven't read these patch notes already, like a day and a half ago. But there's some reasons you guys are probably already aware of that make Primordial pair early game quite powerful. We'll talk about that. But this is a neat little buff on top of that. Scrappy Alliance now takes 2 units per level, down from 3. Level 1, a random Scrappy is granted 9 armor and 8 HP regen. Level 2, when you have 4 Scrappy units, all Scrappy units are granted 9 armor and 8 HP regen. And then when you have all 6, it's all allies are granted 9 and 8. Wow. That's a big change. So, I mean, 4 Scrappy units is suddenly pretty sweet. I mean, this is a very, very big buff. Again, I can't really talk about this without talking about some of the other changes. In theory, you guys might see on your screens some of the kinds of changes that I'm talking about. Yeah, we're gonna get into those. So I think this is a pretty big buff, but again, it's really hard to talk about in a vacuum because they've changed a lot of the hero tiers, and 4 Scrappy is definitely harder to get now. Armor and HP are doubled if you start the fight with less units than your opponent. It's changed to armor and HP are doubled whenever you have fewer units alive than your opponent does, which is also a big buff. It means, like, you know, when you kind of die, like when one of your units dies at the start of the fight, then you get this activation online, which is sweet. Obviously, this gives Scrappy natural synergy with Bloodbound, because you can just sacrifice one. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna stop. Hero changes: Abaddon, attack damage. So they buffed 3-star versions. This is something that they've kind of done across the board in certain areas where they just like buff 3-star versions. You can see the numbers are the same except for the 3-star, which is just higher. So attack damage is just higher at 3 stars. Aphotic shield is just better at 3 stars. So it's just a buff to 3 stars, and they've done this to a lot of heroes. So Abaddon is just better at 3 stars. Arc Warden, attack speed, they made it more upgradable, so it's better at 2 stars and 3 stars, and they made the health and damage better at 3 stars. So again, that's just a buff to 3 stars. In this case, 3-star Arc Warden is not something I was really thinking about doing with my life. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, that wasn't really part of my plans. I don't think it is yet part of my plans. That can't be good, right? It's Arc Warden, guys. This is literally like the worst unit in the game. Why on earth would you run this? It just got a little bit more buffed, right? Arc Warden's making clones faster at 2 stars. It's Pog because of Enigma. I mean, Primordials got buffed. I don't know if Primordials are good enough yet. I do think that the extra attack speed is pretty important. It kind of adds up, because, you know, I mean, this unit, obviously, his clones will inherit any buff, and higher attack speed allows you to cast faster. But, I mean, would you really go for Primordial? Is that actually what we're doing with our lives? Are we for Primordial gamers? I don't know, man. For Primordial is so hard to evaluate. It's really, really hard. Alright, guys. This is the kind of change, this is, when you get to a patch that's really, really big, we're going to have to kind of like redo the whole thing and then revisit it later. It's sort of like when a patch gets to a certain size, it's kind of like watching a movie that has a plot twist at the end, you know? You need to watch it a second time. You understand? So we're going to have to keep going, and we're going to maybe revisit our Arc Warden or Primordial buddies down the road. Alright, boys? Okay. Clockwork. Armor. He gets 1 extra at 3 stars. Literally unkillable. Okay, the maximum health changed from 7/14/28 to 8/16/32. Okay. Attack damage minimum changed to get 10, so he has 10 more damage. But then, of course, as we can see, he's a 3-cost unit now. Why are these 2 separate lines? I mean, they're never going to have a gold cost and a draft tier not be the same thing, right? That would be weird. And then Battery Assault has a damage tick rate. Theoretically, when you get him to 3 stars, it's actually funny. That's just a good meme. He's literally no damage. I don't know. So, it's an interesting change. Basically, this is kind of how we're evaluating Scrappy. And again, we're going to have to go through, because they've changed some of the other Scrappy units as well. So we're just gonna keep this in mind, and I'll revisit this down the road. Enigma. Alliance has changed. He is no longer a Warlock. He is indeed a Shaman now. So this is the change I was talking about when I was talking about the Warlocks. I think if you're running Warlock, I think Warlock is still solid, honestly. I don't think the difference between 180% nerfs it super much. And you can run Shadow Fiend instead of Enigma now in that slot. So if you're running 4 Warlocks, excuse me. If you're running 4 Warlocks, Necrophos, Alchemist, Shadow Fiend, and that 4th OP Warlock, which is it? I forget because you build it and everything. There's a 4th OP Warlock. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so you would still be good running 4 Warlocks with Shadow Fiend instead of the Enigma slot. Yeah, Disruptor. You guys know it. There we go. I can't remember it because you put it in every single build, so it's just something you click on, whatever. Okay, basically, we're a big nerf to Enigma. Shaman is basically a non-tag, and Warlock is a pretty powerful one that he just lost. And Midnight Pulse Radius just went down from 2, 3, 4 to 1, 2, 3. So that's Radius with a center piece. So the way to think about this, we can think about like maximum tiles. A radius of 2 is a 5 by 5, which is a 25 square grid. A radius of 1 is a 3 by 3, which is a 9 square grid. So at level 1, it went from 25 to 9, which, as we all know, is about a reduction of like a factor of about 2.8 or so. It's a pretty big deal, basically. So it's significantly smaller and at every size as well. It's going to be a wimpy 3x3. It's actually pretty tiny. Honestly, this is a huge nerf. Enigma got gutted. Absolutely gutted. I think this is probably a good thing. I mean, Enigma was kind of OP before. It might be an over nerf. I don't know if you want to run this hero anymore. I mean, he's still like a good counter to like knights. He's still a good counter to like slower matchups, but it's a big nerf. I mean, a large part of the reason you ran him was like the Warlock tag. A 9x9 grid is really, or sorry, a 3x3, 9 total squares is really small. Like, that's really, really small. And I know size isn't everything, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, that's just kind of what they tell you when you're that small. When you only have 9 cells. They don't really mean that. Size is everything. Sorry, Enigma. Okay, Kunkka. Kunkka, Ghost Ship. Damage change down 100. Woof! Cooldown up to 15. Yeah, that's not good. That is, that's a pretty big nerf too. Honestly, Kunkka wasn't really that good before. He was kind of overrated. He honestly was. He was okay. This hurts him. I don't know, dude. Isn't Kunkka just shit? I think this hero was overrated even before the legendary meta. It's just like, why do you run this hero? Doesn't he just suck? Yeah, he definitely sucks now. I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit. He's not like bad, but he ain't great. This damage nerf, because he got nerfed a bit before as well. His radius on boat got smaller, and now it's down to 50 damage, which is pretty bad. I do think that this isn't going to be a very powerful hero in the next patch. There still will be some reasons to run it. We'll have to see. You know, it's still like an AoE stun that you get at like, 4 cost range, but I don't really like this that much. That Umber should make him a 3-star? Maybe. Or a 3 cost? Yeah. Maybe. I mean, this is a big nerf. Like 100 damage to every target hit by the boat is pretty huge. And then cooldown is like, it probably doesn't matter, but there's certain fights and certain metas where he was getting it off like twice a fight. Laguna Blade, damage change from 500, 750 up to 200. Okay. I mean, I don't think I'm going to start building a 3-star Lina off of this, so we can just skip that one. Lone Druid, here we go. Oh, maximum mana changed from 100 to 60. Summon Spirit Bear, 100 to 60. Oh, yes. This is the Druid buff we were all eagerly awaiting. I remember reading the r/Underlords subreddit, and I was like looking at all the posts that were begging Volvo to buff Druids, and I was like, I really hope that Volvo takes the user feedback into consideration and does the right thing and buffs Druids. And I'm glad that all of us that wanted Druids to be buffed are happy now and can rejoice off of the buffed Druids. This is a good thing. This is I think it's probably a fair change moving forward. I'm not sure exactly how strong Druids are going to be. Honestly, I'm kind of doing a thing. You guys might have noticed. We'll get back to this at the end. I think Druids are fairly powerful right now. There is a change to Treant that we'll talk about that might maybe sort of balance this out. We'll see. Treant is debatable whether it got buffed or nerfed, but this is a fairly large buff. Being able to get Bear out really early is important. I think a lot of people, you know, when you're new to the game, you understand like big team fight AoEs and stuns. You want to get as early as possible, right? You know, when you're super new, it's like, okay, I'm gonna throw my arcane boots on my Tidehunter, and this is a good thing, you know. But when it comes to like mid game summons, it's just as important getting them off early. Like every second counts. Like Lone Druid getting Bear off like 2 seconds earlier, or like Lycan Wolves getting off 2 seconds earlier is absolutely huge. Like it's like stun level huge, right? And it's definitely gonna help this hero become a lot more viable. It was kind of the game was in like a really weird spot with Treant being so powerful. There's like some situations where you'd rather have a Treant than a Lone Druid, which is pretty strange. I don't think this is like a bad change overall, but without other nerfs to Druids, I suspect this might make it a little too strong. Lastly, we get Spirit Bear gained the Druid tag, which is a buff to completing the cycle. This only affects completing the cycle, but as we can see down further, which I'll get to as well, completing the cycle did also get a buff. So this is scary. Lycan, maximum health changed up to 36, so it's just a buff to 3 stars, as we can see. Summoned wolves now have phased movements and can run through other units. So, yeah, this is pretty... I mean, honestly, it doesn't change. It's just a 3-star buff, right? I don't think phase movement is really going to improve this in some miraculous way. It's just a 3-star buff. Medusa, gold cost changed from 4 to 5, and draft tier changed from 4 to 5. And split shot is now down from 40 to 20. So split shot was kind of interesting, and we can see the extra shots change from 2 to 2, 3, 4. So extra shots, of course, being additional to her own. She had like 2 extra shots before. On average, it's going to be something like 1.7 per attack, based on the fact that she's not always going to have extra units to be able to attack. And she's pretty much not reliably going to be able to get 2-starred because she's legendary right now. It's going to be fairly unreliable to try. So at an average of something like 1.7 charges per attack, we can scale that down with the minus 40%. So at 1.7 extra shots per attack, at 60% efficacy per extra shot, we have it's actually pretty close to just like a double damage, right? It's very, very close to just a double damage modifier. Whereas now that split shot is 80% instead of 60% on those, you know, effective 1.7. It's closer to 250%, which is pretty big, honestly. However, it's not big enough to make up for the fact that it's legendary instead of epic. This is a pretty big nerf in my mind. I think this is a gigantic nerf. I think it's not even, like... It's a huge nerf. So the biggest difference between epics and legendaries, obviously the time frame. So the thing to understand is the draft tier. I'm going to just talk about the draft tier itself. Legendaries are much, much, much worse than epics. Now, it's balanced by the fact that heroes that are put in legendaries are kind of being OP, right? That's how it's balanced. But when you think about legendaries to epics, there's like 3 things you have to consider. First of all, you can find epics very early. Like, I can find a Medusa. It's not even that uncommon to just like be finding a Medusa on like round 13. It's like happens like once a game because there's like 8 people. That's pretty common. It's not rare, you know. And maybe you're like, okay, I've got a level 2 drow. I ass pulled this Medusa on round 13. Let's get like, you know, a hunter stat online, get a bit of strength that way. That's not happening anymore. Earliest you're ass pulling this, like super early ass pull, and if this is high roll, probably like round 25. That's so much later, it's crazy, right? And that's if you're ass pulling it. And the second most important thing is the fact that you can't really 2-star it, right? The odds of getting this to 2-star just plummeted. Before, like, an epic, you can basically guarantee that you're going to get it to 2-star by the end of the game. Like, by a few rounds before the end of the game, it's like 85% chance of getting it to 2-star. Even for something that people are going for a lot, like, it's pretty reliable. It's like, it's something you can force very often. But a legendary to 2-star is a luxury. right? Yo, Quaddef, welcome back to the 1/8 Gay Club. There's also a net change of 1 additional legendaries total, making getting 2-star way harder for legendaries. Yes, that's true as well. And we'll talk about that a bit more later. I think I said there was a third thing that made this worse as well. I don't even remember what it is at this point. It doesn't even matter. Like, this is a huge nerf, basically. 6 Hunters literally just got destroyed? Yes, exactly. So, gigantic nerf to 6 Hunters. You will basically just, it's a non-option right now. Never build 6 Hunters. According to these patch notes, and obviously I expect things are going to change in as soon as like a week or two. They're updating this game very quickly. But as of right now, as of these patch notes, never go 6 Hunters. Very, very bad. And Medusa herself is, I think, pretty weak as a hero. I think there's going to be a lot of situations where you might still want to run her for the scaled pair buff. But honestly, she seems pretty neutered. Like, I wouldn't really go out of my way to draft this hero. Mirana. Maximum mana changed, and of course, arrow cost changed down to 70. Her attack damage is a bit lower here. Oh, sorry. I said lower. I meant the other one. It's higher. It's higher across all levels. And that's a pretty big deal. So as you can see, minimum at, 1 star is up by 10, maximum is up by 12, so net of 11 per average attack, which is a big deal. 11 is, a buff of exactly 20% at, the minimum. So it's basically, it's like a 20.5% buff. It's a pretty big one, honestly. I mean, that's pretty good DPS. And then we've got Sacred Arrow coming in at a lower mana cost as well. The mana cost with Arrow is really important because it looks kind of like, it goes down from 100 to 70, so you're thinking just based on those numbers, it gets better by, like 40% or whatever, but it's a lot bigger than that. So what it means is because she has such a low cooldown at 8 seconds, the odds of her getting the second arrow for the second arrow, especially in a time frame that will actually impact the fight's outcome, go up by even more than that, right? Because she has such a low cooldown, this like low mana cost is really, really important buff to her. So a big buff. Unfortunately, we have to think, I mean, patches are very complicated, and meta is like a ecosystem, right? There's a lot of like little changes that will affect things indirectly. So while Mirana is better, the fact that 6 Hunters are worse means she does have a bit of less of a place within the game. We'll have to kind of revisit this at the end to see how exactly that's going to be impacting things. But the hero herself is a lot better. She was one of the weaker ones before, and she's belonging to like 2 fairly weak alliances right now, which are Elusive and Hunter, but Hunter's still pretty good as like 3F. Okay, Morphling. Oh, Morphling. Oh, attack speed 77 to 91. Holy shit. Oh my, that's quite a lot. So obviously this is an attack speed of 0.14, which means now, every time an old Morphling would have done 7 attacks, the new Morphling does 8 attacks in that time, for reference. That's a big deal. It's noticeable. It's very similar to Mirana's buff. We can actually compare this to Mirana. So the attack damage goes up by 20 or 21%, whereas Morphling's attack speed goes up by basically the same amount, right? It's a very similar amount. It's a little bit less. I think it's closer to like 18%. And this is bigger than attack damage because it also impacts the ability to have like mana gain, right? Which attack damage typically won't at a 2-star level. Speed is better, exactly. You'd rather have attack speed than attack damage if it's the same DPS, usually. So I mean, this is a big deal. It looks pretty small at first to a lot of people, but it will make a large change. Maximum mana goes down to 75, similar to Mirana. It's getting a very similar treatment across the board. And waveform cooldown change, -2 seconds across the board. So, I mean, that's just a solid buff. And again, I mean, a bigger buff to Morphling as well is if we're going back to the top, assassins that have enemy in their attack range will attack instead of jumping. This is really huge. It's really, really huge for Morphling, because you really want to frontline Morphling, especially if you get like a level 2 Morphling early. So something about the early game is there's a lot of 2-cost units that I kind of wouldn't have built before, even if I had the opportunity in like the first 10 rounds of the game. But suddenly Morphling isn't one of them. Like if I 2-star Morphling early, I feel very happy. I've got pivot options, I can go into assassins. Maybe we're about to live in a universe where I could pivot 2-star Morphling into Primordials. I don't know. That's weird to me, but maybe. Maybe. But either way, I've got options, and it's strong. Like a 2-star Morphling is really big. One thing to kind of be aware of with Morphling is how to position it in this new game. So now that it doesn't jump, the idea is you want Morphling to be a frontliner, and you want it to kind of take some amount of damage without dying, right? So this means that you are frontlining your level 2 morph, but level 1 morph is kind of bad, right? Because like ideally, the fact that waveform takes off aggro is really important. You think about this from like a DPS and health gain perspective, you want your units to take a lot of damage but not die. And Morphling is perfect for that. When this gets to level 2, you frontline this, it takes a good amount of damage, and then as soon as it charges its waveform, it waveforms away, and it's at 75 now. That's crazy. This is so crazy. It waveforms away as soon as it takes that much damage, which means immediately your opponents will stop attacking it. They'll attack something else, and it will have accomplished eating a lot of damage, not dying, and charging like a fairly large AoE ability sooner rather than later, which is nuts, right? Also, maybe you have another Primordial, so maybe you've even disarmed an enemy or two in the process. Like that's so crazy, and none of this could have been possible before. Literally none of this. Because it has to leap in back. Like, it's such an incredible buff. It's ridiculous. Morphling just went from, like, the most piece of shit hero. You wouldn't even run this in 6 assassins. That's how bad Morphling was. There was no build you would really run this in. You would sometimes run it in 6 assassins for a bit. Like, unbelievably bad. One of the worst heroes in the entire game. And suddenly, this is like an actual unit. Like an unironic actual unit. That's crazy. This is like the biggest buff. Like, assassins are better, primordials are better. It doesn't jump, all of its stats are better. Literally all of them. Like, I don't know, dude. I'm gonna be so mad if primordial is actually viable. Is it possible? Are we in a world where we're thinking about running 4 primordial? I'm gonna have to try it. We'll see. We'll come back to this, okay? Nature's Prophet. Cast animation length changed from, it's like a 2-second cast to a 1-second cast. I mean, I guess that's kind of cute. I don't think this is a big buff. It's like, you were casting it, what, like every 7 or 8 seconds, I think, on average? It has a 5-second cooldown, but you usually weren't nailing that cooldown, so you're saving yourself like 1 second every like 7 or 8 seconds. I mean, that matters. It really does. But, I mean, it's Furion, right? This hero blows, or at least it did. It can't really be that much better. There's one thing that we can kind of get to further down that might make it a bit better. It's not this. Lesser Treants now spawns near Prophet. That's cool. So, they have less walking time. Attack speed is up. Ooh. Ooh. And max health is up by like 50 or 100. Honestly, you know, when added together, Nature's Prophet actually received a legitimate buff. I think it's fair to say this is an actual hero now. He's not like an actual hero in the same way that Morphling is. He's not quite unironic. Like, Morphling is now unironic. Nature's Prophet is actual. Like, this hero exists now. But he's not like mind-blowing, right? He's okay. He blows, but he doesn't blow minds. Honestly, he's alright. I think like before Furion was in this place where he was so shit, you wouldn't even run him to complete druids a lot. But now it's like, he's a druid completer. You know, if you get a 2-star Enchantress, or you're actually not unhappy to see a Furion, right? I think that's fine. Like, you get a 2-star enchantress, and you're like, okay, Furon, sweet. Let's shove him in, see how it works, right? And that's good in that way. So Necrophos, Death Bolts, cooldown went 200 and it went up to 7.5 from 5. That's solid. It's a neat little nerf. Makes Octarine even better on him, I think. But it is a bit of a nerf. Hero's still solid, of course. You know, he got nerfed as well with like Warlocks getting a little bit worse, but it's still a very solid hero. I mean, he's got Undead, he's got Warlock, he's still got a good ability. I don't think it's really possible for this unit to be bad by design. It's like the ability and the alliances are just too useful, too unique. It's just good. It won't be bad, but he does feel a bit worse, a little bit less like super OP. Not too much more to say about that.